The massive ship of the Talaxian Empire hung in Earth's orbit like a predator studying its prey. For over 6,000 years, the Talaxians had ruled more than half the galaxy, conquering countless worlds and absorbing hundreds of alien species into their empire. First contact with a new civilization always followed the same pattern: overwhelming show of force, demands for surrender, then quick integration into the imperial system. Today would be no different, or so they thought. Admiral Jackson Reed stood tall on the bridge of the UES Defender, Earth's diplomatic vessel chosen for this historic meeting. His weathered face revealed nothing as he studied the Talaxian flagship through the viewscreen. It was at least 20 times larger than the Defender, bristling with weapon ports and radiating power that their sensors struggled to measure. "They're hailing us again, sir," Lieutenant Grayson reported, her fingers dancing over the communications panel. Reed nodded. "Put them through." The screen flickered, revealing the alien commander. The Talaxian had blue-tinted skin with ridges running along both sides of its elongated face. 4 yellow eyes blinked independently as it studied the humans. "I am Supreme Commander Drek of the glorious Talaxian Empire," the alien announced in perfect English. Their translation systems were impressive. "Your primitive scanning technology has no doubt informed you of our overwhelming military superiority. We demand Earth's immediate and unconditional surrender." A small smile crossed Reed's face. "Commander Drek, I'm Admiral Jackson Reed of the United Earth Defense Fleet. On behalf of humanity, I must decline your generous offer." Drek's upper eyes narrowed. "Perhaps you misunderstand. This is not a negotiation. The Talaxian Empire rules 60% of this galaxy. We have conquered species far more advanced than yours." "I understand completely," Reed replied calmly. "And that's why I'm giving you one warning. Run." Silence filled the bridge as the Talaxian commander stared at the human. Then, a sound like grinding stones emerged from Drek's throat. Laughter. "You amuse me, human. Your species has barely achieved faster than light travel. Our sensors detect only this vessel and a handful of primitive orbital platforms defending your world." Reed's expression remained unchanged. "What you see is what we want you to see, Commander." "Brave words from a doomed species," Drek responded. "The Talaxian Empire has conquered 10,000 worlds. Not once in our glorious history have we retreated. Then today will be historic for both our peoples," Reed said. "You have 24 Earth hours to leave this system. After that, we cannot guarantee your safety." Drek's face contorted into what might have been a smile. "I will enjoy personally placing your homeworld under Imperial control, Admiral." The Talaxian Empire does not run. The transmission ended abruptly. Lieutenant Grayson turned to Reed. "Sir, do you think they'll listen?" Reed sighed heavily. "No, they never do." He moved to the central command table where a holographic display showed the Talaxian vessels surrounded by smaller ships beginning to deploy in standard combat formation. "Send word to the Council. Tell them negotiations have failed, as expected." Reed turned to his second-in-command. "Commander Wilson, initiate protocol Sleeping Giant." Wilson's eyes widened. "Are you sure, sir? Once we reveal our true capabilities." "I know," Reed interrupted, "but they've made their choice. Alert all hidden installations, wake our stealth fleet in the Kuiper Belt, and prepare the quantum communication jammers." As his crew carried out the orders, Reed gazed at the Talaxian flagship through the viewscreen. 6,000 years of unchallenged conquest had made them arrogant, unable to recognize a real threat when faced with one. The Talaxians had conquered many worlds, subjugated countless species, but they had never fought humans before. They had never faced a species that had perfected the art of war by fighting itself for thousands of years. They were about to learn why humanity's warning should have been heeded. Emperor Doth lounged on his crystalline throne, tentacles twitching with mild interest as the intelligence briefing continued. The royal chamber of the Talaxian palace ship hummed with quiet activity as advisors and servants moved efficiently around their ruler. "The species calls itself human. "Your Magnificence," stated Intelligence Director Vex, projecting holographic images of Earth and its inhabitants. "They occupy a single planet in a remote spiral arm. Our deep scans show they achieved space travel less than 2 centuries ago." The Emperor's upper eyes narrowed. "Then why has Commander Drek requested additional battleships for a simple subjugation?" Vex's skin flushed a deeper blue with embarrassment. "The humans have displayed unusual confidence, Your Magnificence. They issued what appeared to be a threat." "A threat?" Emperor Dot's laugh echoed through the chamber. "From barely space-capable primates." "Indeed, most curious," Vex continued. "Our historical analysis shows these humans spent most of their development fighting among themselves. They've had over 15,000 recorded wars within their own species." This caught the Emperor's attention. "Internal warfare. For how long?" "Their entire history, Your Magnificence. Unlike evolved species who unified early, humans continued killing each other even as they developed nuclear weapons and basic space travel." Grand General Mox stepped forward, the decorated veteran's battle scars glowing faintly against his blue skin. "This explains their posturing, Emperor. Species with internal conflict histories often bluff when facing superior forces. They know nothing of true galactic warfare." Emperor Doth considered this. "What defenses do they possess?" A three-dimensional map of Earth's solar system appeared, highlighting various points. "Minimal," Vex explained. "One small defense fleet, some orbital platforms around their homeworld, primitive settlements on their moon and neighboring planet. Their technology appears to be early ion propulsion with basic energy shields." "And yet they warned us to run," the Emperor mused, almost amused. "A desperate bluff," General Mox insisted. "We've seen this behavior in other primitive species. They hope to appear more dangerous than they are." The Emperor's tentacles curled thoughtfully. "Deploy the 7th Fleet, not for fear of their capabilities, but because I want this done efficiently." Commander Drek appears unnecessarily concerned. "It shall be done," General Mox bowed. On Earth, the Planetary Defense Council gathered in their underground headquarters beneath the Rocky Mountains. The room was simple but functional, with 12 humans seated around a circular table. "The Talaxians are mobilizing a larger fleet," Admiral Reed reported, standing before a holographic display. "Our stealth observers in their territory count 36 warships preparing to jump to our system." President Torres frowned. "So they ignored our warning." "As expected," nodded Reed. "Their historical pattern shows they've never retreated from first contact. 6,000 years of easy conquests has made them overconfident." General Parker, a weathered woman with gray hair pulled into a tight bun, leaned forward. "Our concealment technology is holding. They still have no idea of our true capabilities or the extent of our defensive network." "What about our final diplomatic option?" asked Dr. Levitt, the Council's psychologist. Reed shook his head. "Ambassador Clark is making one last attempt as we speak, but initial reports are not promising." In the sterile meeting chamber of the Talaxian flagship, Ambassador Clark stood calmly before Commander Drek and his officers. Despite being surrounded by aliens who towered over him, the elderly diplomat showed no fear. "Commander, I urge you to reconsider," Clark said. "Humanity has spent thousands of years perfecting warfare against ourselves. We've developed technologies specifically to remain hidden from detection. Yet we detect nothing significant," Drek replied dismissively. "Your settlements beyond Earth are minimal. Your ships are few." Clark smiled sadly. "What you see is what we allow you to see." "Enough." Drek slammed his fist on the table. "The Talaxian Empire does not negotiate with primitive species. You will surrender or be conquered. Those are your only options." Ambassador Clark straightened his simple gray suit and turned to leave. At the doorway, he paused. "We warned you to run," he said quietly. "Remember that we tried peace first." As Clark's diplomatic shuttle returned to Earth, the Talaxian 7th Fleet completed its jump into the solar system, weapons charged and ready for the easy victory they all expected. They couldn't have been more wrong. The Talaxian 7th Fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the solar system. 36 warships arranged in perfect battle formation, their hulls gleaming under the distant sun. Commander Drek stood on the bridge of the flagship, the massive Eternal Glory, his 4 eyes scanning the tactical displays with satisfaction. "Begin standard conquest approach," he ordered. "Set course for the 3rd planet." "Yes, Commander," his navigation officer responded. "Estimated arrival at Earth orbit in 6 hours at standard conquest speed." Drek settled into his command chair. This would be yet another simple victory to add to his already impressive record. He had personally overseen the subjugation of 17 worlds. Earth would be 18. As the fleet passed the orbit of Neptune, Lieutenant Jax at the sensor station frowned. "Commander, I'm detecting something strange," he reported, adjusting his instruments. "Explain," Drek demanded. "There appear to be objects in the outer system that weren't visible in our initial scans, small satellites of some kind." Drek moved to the sensor station, his interest piqued. "Show me." The display revealed dozens, then hundreds of small objects scattered throughout the outer planet's orbits. They seemed to shimmer in and out of sensor range, as if they were only partially there. "Why didn't we detect these before?" Drek demanded. Before Lieutenant Jax could answer, the ship's communication system emitted a harsh squeal, then went silent. "Communications are down, Commander," the communications officer shouted. "All channels. Restore them immediately," Drek ordered. "Attempting, sir, but—" The officer's words were cut short as all displays on the bridge flickered and died, plunging them into emergency lighting. "What is happening?" Drek demanded, his voice rising. Chief Engineer Vorn's voice crackled over the emergency channel. "Commander, some kind of quantum field is disrupting our systems. It's like nothing I've ever seen. It's isolating each ship in the fleet from communicating with the others." Drek felt the first twinges of concern. This was not standard resistance behavior. Battle stations, ray shields. The shields hummed to life just as the tactical officer shouted, "Commander, ships appearing. They're everywhere." Where moments before there had been empty space, now hundreds of human vessels materialized around the Talaxian fleet. They seemed to phase into existence, as if stepping out from behind an invisible curtain. "Impossible," Drek whispered. These ships weren't on any of their scans. Not even a trace. A human face appeared on their main viewer, Admiral Reed of the United Earth Defense Fleet. "Commander Drek," Reed said calmly, "I see you chose to ignore our warning." "How did you?" Drek began, but Reed continued. "Your ships are now isolated by our quantum communication disruptors. You cannot contact each other or your empire. Your sensors are being fed false data, and you are surrounded by just a small portion of our actual fleet." Around the Talaxian ships, the human vessels moved with impossible precision. They were smaller but sleeker, with unfamiliar technology pulsing along their hulls. "Open fire," Drek commanded, panic rising in his throat. The Eternal Glory's weapons powered up, but before they could fire, a beam of blue energy struck the ship with surgical precision. The weapons systems went offline instantly. Across the fleet, the same was happening. One by one, each Talaxian ship was systematically disabled. Weapons, engines, and shields neutralized with terrifying efficiency. Not destroyed, just rendered helpless. "This is not possible," Lieutenant Jax whispered, watching the tactical display. "These humans, they're not fighting like anyone we've ever encountered." On the display, Admiral Reed's expression remained neutral. "Your entire fleet has been neutralized, Commander. No casualties on either side. That was intentional." Drek stared at the human, his worldview crumbling around him. How could they have so drastically underestimated the species? "Consider this a demonstration," Reed continued. "We don't want war with the Talaxian Empire. But make no mistake, we are fully capable of waging one if necessary." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Outside, the human ships maintained their perfect formation around the helpless Talaxian fleet. The first battle between humans and the mighty Talaxian Empire had ended in less than 5 minutes, without a single shot fired by the invaders. And Drek finally understood what the warning meant. Emperor Doth's throne room fell into a stunned silence. The Imperial Guard stood frozen, their weapons half raised as if expecting enemies to materialize from thin air. The Emperor himself sat unnaturally still, his 4 eyes fixed on the holographic projection showing the remains of his fleet. "Play it again," he commanded, his voice dangerously quiet. The recording flickered to life once more. 36 of the Empire's finest warships, disabled in under 5 minutes. No casualties, but complete neutralization. The humans had been surgical in their precision. "This cannot be real," Grand General Mox muttered, his blue skin paling to a sickly gray. "It must be falsified." Intelligence Director Vex shook his head. "The data stream is authentic, verified across multiple channels. This footage came directly from Commander Drek's ship before we lost contact with the fleet." Emperor Doth's tentacles curled in barely controlled rage. "You told me they were primitives. You said they had only achieved basic space travel." "That's what all our intelligence indicated," Vex replied, his voice trembling. "There was no sign of advanced technology, no evidence of military capability beyond their immediate planet." "Then explain this," Doth roared, gesturing at the hologram where human ships appeared to materialize from nowhere around the Talaxian fleet. The room fell silent again until Science Advisor Lin stepped forward cautiously. "Your Magnificence, we have analyzed what little data we received before communications were severed. The humans appear to possess some form of phase-shifting technology that renders their ships and installations completely undetectable until activated." "How is that possible?" demanded General Mox. "Such technology is theoretical at best." Lin's fingers danced over her datapad. "Not only possible but implemented on a scale we've never seen. Furthermore, their weapons disabled our ships without destroying them. An act of mercy, or perhaps a demonstration." Emperor Doth's eyes narrowed. "No species shows mercy to the Talaxian Empire. We have ruled this galaxy for 6,000 years." "There's more," Vex added reluctantly. "We've discovered encrypted transmissions dating back decades between Earth and several worlds under our control." This revelation sent a wave of murmurs through the assembled advisors. "Are you suggesting espionage? Rebellion?" Doth's voice had turned deadly quiet. "We don't know the content of these transmissions," Vex admitted, "but they exist. The humans have been watching us, studying us, perhaps for centuries while we remained unaware of their existence." The Emperor rose from his throne, towering over his advisors. "What options do we have?" General Mox straightened his posture. "We still hold the advantage of numbers, Your Magnificence. The human display, while impressive, involved only a small region of space. We command fleets across thousands of star systems. And if all those systems contain hidden human technology we cannot detect." Lin questioned. "Impossible," Mox dismissed. "No species could maintain such a widespread hidden presence." Science Advisor Lin studied her readings again. "The humans showed us only what they wanted us to see. We have no way of knowing their true capabilities or reach." "Negotiate," suggested Vex. "Open diplomatic channels. Learn more about their—" "Negotiate." Emperor Doth's laugh was harsh. "The Talaxian Empire does not negotiate from a position of weakness. We conquer. We rule. We do not bend." The Emperor returned to his throne, his decision made. "Mobilize the Grand Fleet. All of it. If these humans wish to challenge us, they will face the full might of the Talaxian Empire." General Mox bowed deeply. "As you command, Your Magnificence, I will personally lead our forces." As the advisors dispersed to carry out their orders, Lin lingered behind. "Your Magnificence," she said quietly, "the humans gave us a warning before we engage. They told us to run." Emperor Doth's eyes flashed with anger. And why would you remind me of this insult? Not as an insult, Lin replied carefully, but as a consideration. What if it wasn't a threat, but genuine advice? The Emperor dismissed her with a wave. As Lin left the throne room, Doth sat alone, watching the footage of his disabled fleet one more time. For the first time in his long rule, a flicker of doubt crossed his mind. But pride won over caution. The Empire would not run. It never had before. Deep within the Rocky Mountains, the massive doors of Earth's Central Command slid open. Admiral Reed walked through the bustling control room, where hundreds of military personnel monitored wall-sized displays, tracking Talaxian movements across the galaxy. They're mobilizing everything, General Parker reported, not looking up from her station. Long-range stealth platforms are detecting activity in all 26 Talaxian fleet bases. Reed nodded grimly. As expected. They've never backed down before. Why start now? The Admiral approached the central holographic table where a three-dimensional map of the galaxy rotated slowly. Blue dots represented human installations, red indicated Talaxian forces. With a simple hand gesture, Reed expanded the display. Blue dots appeared everywhere, thousands of them, scattered across systems thought to be solely under Talaxian control. Activation code sent, Lieutenant Grayson announced from her communication station. All dormant defense platforms coming online. Across the galaxy, on planets the Talaxians believed were firmly under their control, hidden human technology began to awaken. Stealth fields dropped momentarily as massive defense installations revealed themselves in orbit around Talaxian colony worlds. Underground bases opened on moons and asteroids. Hidden fleets emerged from the dark spaces between stars. Status report, Reed demanded. All systems responding, reported Commander Wilson. The Arcturus network is fully operational. Perseus defense grid at 97%. Orion platforms standing by. Reed took a deep breath. For over a century, humanity had secretly built this network, spreading throughout the galaxy while maintaining the illusion of being confined to one small solar system. The Talaxians had never suspected that the species they dismissed as primitive had already expanded far beyond Earth. "Sir," Grayson called out, "the United Earth Senate is assembled and waiting." Reed straightened his uniform and stepped onto the communication platform. The senators appeared on screens surrounding him, representatives from Earth and its many hidden colonies throughout the stars. "Senators," Reed began, "diplomacy has failed. The Talaxian Empire has chosen war over peace. They're mobilizing their entire military force against us." Senator Ortiz, an elderly woman with steel-gray hair, leaned forward. "Are we certain there's no peaceful resolution possible?" "We tried, Senator," Reed replied. "We disabled their scout fleet without casualties. We offered terms. They responded by activating every warship in their empire." "Then we have no choice," said Senator Blackwell, his dark face solemn. "The defense protocols must be implemented." The vote was quick and unanimous. After years of preparation, there was little to debate. Humanity had hoped this day would never come, but they had planned for it nonetheless. Reed returned to the command center, where General Parker awaited orders. "Deploy primary defense protocol," Reed commanded. "Selective strikes only. Military targets. Minimal casualties." "Understood," Parker nodded. "And the suppression technology?" "Activated," Reed confirmed. "Full spectrum." Throughout Talaxian space, human stealth ships moved into position. These weren't the small vessels the Talaxians had encountered in Earth's solar system. These were massive warships, built in secret, incorporating technologies the Talaxians couldn't begin to understand. The humans hadn't spent thousands of years fighting only themselves. They had fought the laws of physics, the barriers of space and time. They had created weapons that could disable entire fleets without destroying them. Propulsion systems that moved through space in ways that defied conventional detection. Communication networks that couldn't be intercepted or jammed. All because humanity understood one thing better than any species in the galaxy. War was terrible, But being unprepared for it was worse. On the main display, red dots began to disappear as Talaxian communication and command centers went silent one by one. Not destroyed, just cut off, isolated, neutralized. First wave complete, Parker announced. No reported casualties. Talaxian response capabilities reduced by 60%. Reed watched the display, his expression somber. Begin Phase 2. The human counterattack had begun, and the Talaxian Empire was about to learn what it truly meant to face humanity in war. General Mox stared at the emergency communication system, willing it to function. The command center of the Talaxian Grand Fleet flagship had descended into barely controlled chaos. Officers rushed between stations, shouting reports that grew more alarming by the minute. Still no contact with Central Command, reported his communications officer. All quantum channels remain blocked. What about the planetary defense bases in the Rigel sector? Mox demanded. Silent, sir. All 18 of them. Mox slammed his fist against the tactical display. The holographic map flickered, showing vast portions of Talaxian space going dark. Not under attack, just silent. Cut off. It was as if entire sections of the Empire had simply vanished from the communications network. How is this possible? He growled. No species has ever penetrated our quantum communication grid. A junior officer approached cautiously. General, we've received a message directly to this ship. Somehow they bypassed our security protocols. They? The humans. Yes, sir. Text only. The message appeared on the main screen. 5 simple words. We will you to run. Before Mox could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. The tactical officer's voice rose in panic. General, our weapon systems are shutting down. Engine controls not responding. Outside the viewport, Mox watched in horror as the same happened across his entire fleet. Thousands of warships, the pride of the Talaxian Empire, drifting powerless in space. And then the humans appeared. Ships materialized around the Talaxian fleet, emerging from what seemed like another dimension entirely. Not hundreds this time. Thousands. A vast armada that had been there all along, invisible to Talaxian sensors. Across the galaxy, the pattern repeated. On the Talaxian mining world of Karis, Governor Plex stared in disbelief as the enslaved Andronian workers suddenly disabled their control collars and marched on the administration building. How did they get weapons? He screamed at his security chief. Where did these tools come from? The security chief had no answer. None of them understood how primitive slaves had suddenly acquired technology that could neutralize Talaxian defenses. The truth was simple but impossible for them to grasp. Humans had been there for decades, working secretly among the oppressed species, providing technology and training, waiting for this day. On 37 Talaxian worlds simultaneously, underground resistance movements erupted into coordinated rebellion. Species that had been conquered centuries ago rose up with surprising organization and inexplicably advanced weapons. The Borak, thought to be a simple agricultural species, disabled an entire planetary defense grid in hours. The insectoid Thrill, used as miners for their natural digging abilities, emerged from tunnel systems that weren't on any Talaxian map. The aquatic Vest disabled underwater resource processing stations with devices that shouldn't have functioned in their deep ocean homes. All of them had one thing in common: human advisors who had lived among them in secret, preparing them for this moment. In his throne room, Emperor Doth watched his empire unravel through fragmented reports. Each update brought news more disturbing than the last. We've lost contact with the Cygnus sector, reported an exhausted communication officer. That's the 12th sector in the past hour. The Grand Fleet, Doth demanded. Neutralized, all ships intact, but completely powered down. How can they be everywhere at once? The Emperor roared. How could we not see them coming? Science advisor Lin, who had warned caution days earlier, spoke quietly. Because they were already here, Your Magnificence. They've been here for years, perhaps decades. building their network right under our sensors. Impossible, Doth whispered, but the evidence was overwhelming. A final communication came through, direct to the Emperor's private channel. Admiral Reed's face appeared, calm and resolute. "Emperor Doth," Reed said simply, "the fighting can stop now. Your military installations have been neutralized. Your fleet's disabled. We've taken great care to avoid casualties. This isn't about vengeance." "What is it about then?" Doth asked, his voice hollow. "Choice," Reed replied. "We're offering you one last chance to make the right one." As the transmission ended, Doth realized with terrible clarity what the humans had done. They hadn't just defeated the Talaxian military. They had broken the myth of Talaxian invincibility that had kept the Empire together for millennia. The Empire wasn't just losing a war. It was crumbling from within. The Imperial Palace on Talax Prime had never known such silence. Guards stood motionless along walls decorated with trophies from 1,000 conquered worlds. Through massive crystal windows, the capital city stretched to the horizon, its towers gleaming under 3 suns. In the Grand Council chamber, Emperor Doth sat alone at one end of a long table. His imperial robes seemed too large now, his posture diminished. At the other end sat Admiral Reed, flanked by 2 human officers who carried no visible weapons. No Talaxian guards were present, a final humiliation that spoke volumes about the new balance of power. "Your terms," Emperor Doth asked, his voice hollow. Reed placed a simple data pad on the table. The dissolution of the Talaxian Empire as a military power, all conquered worlds to be granted independence or self-governance, a new Galactic Council to be formed with equal representation from all species. Doth's upper eyes narrowed. "You destroy our fleets, disable our defenses, and now expect us to surrender everything we've built over 6,000 years. "We didn't destroy anything," Reed corrected. "Every ship, every installation, all intact. No Talaxian lives were lost in our operation." "A point of pride for you?" Doth asked bitterly. "A demonstration of intent," Reed replied. "If we wanted destruction, Emperor, you would have seen it." Doth stared at the human, trying to understand. "Why did you wait? If you've had this capability for years, why not strike sooner? Why allow us to continue controlling these worlds?" Reed's expression softened slightly. "Because war is always our last choice, not our first. We hoped to remain hidden, to avoid conflict entirely." "How long?" Doth asked. "How long have humans been watching us?" "We discovered the Talaxian Empire 300 years ago," Reed answered. "We observed your conquests, your subjugation of peaceful species. We decided then to prepare, but not to engage unless forced." The Emperor's 4 eyes widened in shock. 300 years. Impossible. We would have detected you." Reed shook his head. "Your species evolved in a system with 3 suns. Emperor, you never learned to look into the dark." A silence fell between them as Doth processed this revelation. "And the rebellions across our territories. The slaves rising up with advanced technology. We helped them," Reed acknowledged. "But we didn't start anything. We simply provided tools to those who already sought freedom." The Emperor studied the data pad before him. "And if I refuse these terms?" Reed didn't answer directly. Instead, he activated a holographic display showing the Talaxian homeworld from orbit. Surrounding the planet were hundreds of human ships that had been invisible just moments before. "We don't want to demonstrate our offensive capabilities," Reed said quietly. The defensive operation was enough. Doth understood the unspoken threat. With evident reluctance, he pressed his palm to the data pad, confirming his acceptance of the terms. "So ends the great Talaxian Empire," he murmured. "So begins something better," Reed countered. "Your people won't suffer, Emperor. They'll simply learn to coexist rather than conquer." As the documents were finalized, Doth asked the question that had haunted him since the conflict began. "Why are humans so effective at warfare? What made your species different?" Reed considered this carefully before answering. While your empire conquered the stars, humanity nearly destroyed itself dozens of times. We faced extinction from our own weapons, our own divisions. We survived nuclear war, climate collapse, biological weapons, artificial intelligence rebellions. We learned that survival doesn't come from dominance, but from adaptation and cooperation. He paused, looking directly at the Emperor. We warned you to run not because we wanted to fight, but because we knew exactly how this would end if you forced our hand. We fought ourselves for thousands of years. Fighting you was simpler. As Reed departed the chamber, Emperor Doth remained seated, gazing out at the capital city that had ruled a galaxy for millennia. In the sky above, the first representatives from formerly subjugated worlds were arriving for the inaugural meeting of the new Galactic Council. The Talaxian Empire had fallen without a shot being fired in anger. Not through destruction, but through careful, methodical neutralization by a species that understood war so well they could win one without fighting. They had warned the Talaxians to run. Perhaps next time, someone would listen.